relationship coach, life coach, educator. How's it going?
It's going well, it's going well. Just got back from a bit of a vacation. Got
Oh,
to go
nice.
see Madonna in concert on her last tour, so that was pretty amazing experience.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, yeah, I mean, I just kind of wanted to jump into it. If you could tell us a little bit about kind of what you do, and I know when I hear the word like life coach, I think a lot of people might kind of confuse that with therapy. But I know it's like pretty different, right?
Yeah, it definitely is. Life coaching, at least the model I follow, it's similar. It's based on what the ICF, so the International Coaching Federation's model is,
Okay.
and we're really about the current moment and where you're going. And finding, actionable items, things that you can physically do in the world to get to your goals, to get to your, to create that vision for yourself that you want. And really, with where I do focus on those blocks that are getting in your way, and not just the mechanics of things, because that's really what stops us a lot of the times, right?
Yeah.
We can have
So,
all the intention in the world, and we can make a plan, and then all of a sudden we're stuck for some reason, even though we have
yeah.
some great plan.
So is it a lot of like looking at the big picture, but then like breaking it down into steps, and, like how to get there, kind of thing?
It can be depending on where you're at, because it is really client driven. Whoever
Mm,
I'm sitting with really drives the conversation, and I'm just kind of offering my presence and my experience and that depth of awareness on how you're using your language, your body language, everything else to kind of bring those blocks or bring things into your awareness so that you can address those, so that you can find some way to move through that or around it. And so there
okay.
is like, you can kind of see some overlap a little bit in therapy there,
Hmm.
because we are very forward movement and very much about action, sustainability, and accountability. It's a little different.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like therapy might be more, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe more like dealing with past traumas and things like you're trying to get over. Do you deal with any of that as well?
I mean, when you're dealing with blocks, when you're dealing with those
Uh,
internal blocks, yes, like those types of mental or challenges might come up. I'm not in any position to be able to diagnose anybody or
sure.
necessarily treat those things directly, but I am trauma informed, so I do have that understanding of what's happening there. And sometimes those blocks aren't necessarily that deep. So we can work together, like as a coach client relationship, to get through them. And at times I may recommend, hey, let's bring in a therapist or a counselor as well. Why don't you work with them?
Mm,
And we can all work kind of as a team, using you as the client as kind of the hinge point and the communication point to
mm,
make that life you want.
cool. Um, yeah, I mean, what kind of people generally would go for, or would benefit from what you do?
I believe almost anybody would benefit what I do. Like, if
Yeah.
you've got something you're trying to figure out, if you've got something you're lacking clarity around in your life, if you don't necessarily know where you're going in something, or you keep finding yourself, torn between decisions, that's where a coach can start really
Yeah.
helping out.
I mean, the reason I ask is it sounds to me like in order, I mean, even just to take that step of like going to a life coach, I mean, it sounds like you're trying to be proactive. So whether or not you're a proactive person or you're like taking that step to become proactive, I mean, it sounds like, I mean, right? Like you gotta start making movement to in order to even reach out to a life coach.
Yeah, yeah, so there is that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you kinda gotta be unstuck a little bit, or at least, really wanting to become unstuck if you are in a
yeah,
place where you're stuck, I think, to engage with a life coach. So
yeah, totally.
a lot of the engagement I do is trying to help people get to that place of confidence, or recognize where they're stuck, and then maybe get that confidence to reach out
Yeah.
and say, "Hey, you know
Well,
what? Maybe this will help me out. Let's see what I can do."
yeah. And I know, like in your title, you say relationship coach. Is
Yeah.
that, do you mean like, relationship like boyfriend girlfriend relationship, or like relationship with other things in your life, or what does that mean?
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything. In my opinion, everything is a relationship, right? We have a
Mm,
relationship with our spaces. We have a relationship with other people. We have a relationship with ourselves. And so the high level I see what I do is supporting all manners of relationship. I do focus a little bit more in the romantic or personal relationship area.
mm,
Um, but even then, I'm often supporting nurturing that relationship to self more than doing
oh,
directly to support the external relationship. Because typically getting into self, having a stronger relationship there, you can move through the relationship with others easier.
right, right. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, very cool. So, I mean, what are just I know you probably can't go into like personal, information about other people, but like, what are some common things that people are kind of working towards?
Ooh, often what people have been coming towards or coming to me with these days has mostly been trying to figure out where they wanna move into their transit like, into their relationship. Are they at a place where they, can create some changes for themselves and that's sustainable, or do they need to make some greater changes and maybe exit that relationship? I seem to work with a lot of people in that area. I'm also working with a lot of individuals who have done a lot of mental health work already, have maybe dealt with a lot of their
Mm,
blocks and are starting to really find that momentum. So, um, looking at their creative endeavors is a big one. So I do actually have a lot of creatives that I work with. The last one
cool.
is, doing a clothing design. So that's a little bit of what I can share there.
Yeah,
Others,
yeah.
I've got musicians. I've gotten quite a few different people, and I definitely have been working with a number of artists as well, kind of more indirectly, who are be trying to find that path to get their art out there and be
Cool.
willing and open to be vulnerable with their information and with what they're creating.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously coming into this conversation from like an artist perspective. So,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm thinking about, well, I mean, just doing art in general, I mean, I think can be obviously therapeutic. For myself, I mean, I would say any sort of trauma or grief or whatever I'm trying to get over, anger or whatever, like that's all kind of funneled into the art.
yeah,
Um, but I can totally see how, you might have these goals that seem maybe even like unachievable because they're so big. I mean, I think as artists we do have to think big. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess is that kind of like what you're into? Is like that these guys are I wanna have this in my future, but I don't know how to get there, kind of thing.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's exactly it. And then a lot of the tools we do use is to break it down into like manageable steps,
yeah,
manageable achievement marks. So you have that big goal, like maybe it's a thousand followers on a music platform or something,
right,
and you have
okay,
no idea how to get there.
right,
And so we just start breaking it down. I'm working with you to find where you're comfortable and what inspires you to make that next move. So what's that next step? So, around that idea, you want more followers? How would you do that? What might get you more followers? Or what do you see others do that appeals to you?
right.
That would be a question I would throw out there. And it is a lot of questions. I ask
Yeah,
a
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
questions.
So it is kind of like self-discovery in a way, right? I mean, because you're
Very.
you're asking questions, those questions are coming from within as I'm kind of figuring it out with you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah, that
cool.
is really about self-discovery. I like to use the term self-actualization a lot within the type of work I do, just also to differentiate from like therapy or counseling,
Right.
right? Where I'm helping you be your greater self instead of get to that point where you can connect to yourself at all. And at the same time, that means there's going to be a greater degree of self-connection that we nurture,
Hmm.
and a lot of so within some of the frameworks I use, one of them is a partworks modality, which is a little bit separate from my coaching or the education aspect. But there's these elements to our core self, and one of them is creativity. And these are things that naturally arise when we're into alignment or in connection with that sense of self. And so if we can pull that out, if we can get that connection there more so, that creative flow, that flow state happens way more often. And you can just kind of slip
Yeah.
into it and oh, flow state. I love it. Me personally, I do some art, I do some poetry, I do some sculpting. Sculpting is really what my passions on side is on for the artistic world. So clay and stone carving
Cool.
specifically, and I've been doing a little bit of more creative stuff now on the TikTok and making some fun videos. I mean, one of them I did
Yeah.
recently was like going through a song and taking a look at it through the lens of attachment theory to be like, okay, what is the personality of the song? What's the energy of the song? Is it
mm,
like expressing an insecure style attachment, or is it a secure style of attachment? So attachment theory, if you don't know, or if our
I
audience isn't
don't, yeah.
aware,
Yeah, I don't know
it's
about that.
a yeah, it's a developmental sort of concept
Okay.
where we form our main attachment patterns, through our primary caregivers, and they can express one of sort of four ways. Three of those being insecure methods, and one of those being secure. We all kind of have a mix mash of those behaviors or habits as we age and times. And what
Mhm,
we look for at attachment theory is kind of where the most of those habits are lying. So one of the styles is like avoidant. You may have had that term before. So the anxious avoidant. So they tend to
mm,
avoid situations or move away from connection. And then we have just our pure anxious attachment. They tend to grasp for connection and try to
mm,
force it, and then are disorganized or all over the place. So I take that sign or that thing, I look at a song, and then the last one I did was a secure, very secure sounding song. I was really happy to start
mm.
that sort of program with it. So
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm thinking like as artists, I think speaking for myself, I mean, I think procrastination can be a big issue or roadblock. And like going back to a flow state, like that is kind of like the goal in a lot of ways, like of your art is like being able to be in that state where it's just coming so naturally and it just feels good coming out of you. But a lot of times you might not even want to sit down and do it because your brain is working in other ways, or you know what I mean. So like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, for me, it's just a matter of like making time and like being like, all right, well, I'm gonna sit down and do something, and if it comes out terrible, then whatever. But if you don't or if I don't force myself to do that, then nothing gets done. I'll never even find out if I can do it. I don't know, is that like kind of what we're talking about here? Okay.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's definitely one of the things we talk that comes up a lot for people in art
yeah.
is, procrastination. Procrastination to me is just always a sign of something internal or some sort of
Mm,
misalignment that's not there. Like, where's your value attachment to this plan or this idea or this goal? Can you lean into that to
yeah.
motivate you? Right? And so, what I was hearing with what you were sharing there is you've got some, uh, I guess, what was the word I'm looking here? Some direction and some consistency that you're trying to maintain. And, if you've got this time slot, you sit down and create, and you're trying to
Mhm,
create, and whatever comes out, comes out.
yeah,
You're just kind of stepping into it, what I'm hearing there, with a big openness
yeah.
instead of maybe this desire, like, it has to be a certain way, which is often where procrastination, like, that's a big story that shows up a lot for procrastination or lack of momentum on something you're trying to do for yourself.
Yeah, or I mean, the other thing I've seen a lot, sometimes with myself, but I see it a lot with other artists, is for whatever reason they feel that they're not ready. Which I could have, starting this podcast, I could have put it off for months of
Yeah.
just like, oh, well, I need a better webcam, or oh, I need to figure out some whatever, you know what I mean? But I don't know, yeah, for me, it's just like kind of forcing yourself to do it, and then hopefully you like what you do, I guess.
That's definitely a part of it. Like, I tend to avoid the force, right? When we're
Hmm.
trying to force ourselves or use willpower, we're not actually dealing with what's holding us back from that. So that
Hmm.
idea of like waiting till you're ready. Why do you have to wait till you're ready?
Exactly.
What does ready look like to you? What
Yeah.
do you actually need to do this thing you're doing? And then let's take a look at that. Right? Because
Yeah.
like I could say I could have, waited another year, 2 years before I launched my practice as
Yeah.
well, before I took any stuff. I could have just kept saying, "Oh, I need this certification or that certification or this other certification," and just
Yeah.
continued on this path of education and learning instead of actually doing and implementing and practicing.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna become a master. I'm not gonna become really good unless I get in there into the trenches and do the work.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen that a lot. Like people even they'll want to start a business and they're like, oh, I don't have a logo. I don't have a website. I can't start. Like, well, you're 10 steps behind if that's the problem.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I'm question then that's where I'll come to. So, why do you think you need that website specifically to be able to start what you're doing. Let's say an artist, for example,
Mhm.
a creative of some type, like a musician.
Yeah,
Do you need your logo to get your music in front of people? How true is that?
not true at all.
Not true at all. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
So if
mean, you
that was
can.
a
Sorry, I was gonna say you can always reinvent yourself too. So, you can get started. You can put a bunch of stuff online. A year from now, you can take it down. You know what I mean? It's just you just got to get out there and do it.
yeah.
Kind of my
I
philosophy.
100%, very much mine as well, and very much why I went coaching instead of therapy or counselor.
Hmm.
Like, I do have a lot of knowledge. I've tried to push myself ahead or outside of that area, so into the more therapeutic understandings and knowledge so that I can support people in the area of coaching a little bit more effectively, and,
Hmm.
like, getting that trauma-informed certification was a big part of that, and to
Yeah,
be able to support people in that way. It can get really interesting when we get
yeah,
into some of those real blocks. Like, I mean, I've had people where I've asked that question. It's like, "Well, how much do you really need that thing?" And they'll sit there and they'll rationalize
yeah,
for for a good while, and I have to kind of maybe put a break in there, a little interruption in there and be like, "So you've just told me a lot of reasons for this.
yeah.
How how real are you feeling about that? Like, how are you feeling while you're saying these things? Are you afraid? Are you feeling a sense of fear, or is there a sense of confidence and clarity there?"
Do you think that has a lot to do with past traumas a lot of the time?
Uh, for more performance-based stuff, I would say that can be trauma-based or at least wound-based.
Hmm.
So, like, if you've had like, if you were a child and you tried to be a performer in some way, or maybe you tried to get on stage or sing, and maybe you liked singing around the house, and your family kept being like, you know, "Shut up, be quiet. We don't wanna hear that."
Yeah.
That's gonna get internalized, and that's gonna
Mm,
create some blocks later on, and
yeah.
you might not even recognize them until somebody else kinda points them out or brings them into your awareness.
Mm. Do you find, like with your trauma training, do you find that everyone has some form of trauma?
Yes, I would say absolutely.
Mm,
With the certification I've got, we describe trauma as like capital T trauma. So those are our big traumas that nobody's really going to deny as a trauma. So things like being kidnapped,
right.
etc. Those kind of
Yeah,
stuff. I don't want to go down too many of those words.
yeah. Yeah.
And then we've got our lowercase t trauma, which is more of our everyday stuff that may have a
Mhm,
problem, like an unavailable parent or a caregiver that's not attuned to you as a child. That's going to create a
okay.
level of trauma. Maybe there was some minor bullying or you were teased a bit in your childhood. That too is going to create a layer of trauma or wounds. Not that big capital T stuff that's going to
Right.
like maybe take a bit to work through, but still something that's causing a block and causing you to maybe respond from a fearful, protective place instead of taking your action that you want or doing what you know is right for you and that your values.
Well, I've actually heard that like your brain doesn't know the difference, right? Like trauma is trauma.
Yep.
So there's no, like you can't compare traumas. Like, oh, your trauma's worse or my trauma, because your brain interprets it the same way, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It really does. And like especially for the pre-developmental or like earlier childhood stuff, a
Yeah.
lot of the times that is just like an energetic state in our body. We don't have comprehension around what's causing it. And when that is brought into being, so something outside of ourselves or inside of ourselves triggers that energy, our
Hmm.
mind starts to rationalize it. It's like, I'm
Hmm.
feeling some way. I need to know how this is feeling and why I'm feeling this. And it may not have all the connections or threads to be like, "Oh, I'm feeling like this because it reminds me of this past situation from my childhood or from my early adult or later on in a relationship that turned really bad." It might not see that. Instead, all it's gonna see is I'm feeling this big emotion and I'm in this situation, and it'll reason
Hmm.
within that situation. So you can
Yeah.
have somebody who's really open to you and really maybe really caring in a relationship with you and providing you with support, and then because of that kindness or gentleness, perhaps, that could trigger protection.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden you shut down, you block, and you're afraid, and you maybe start lashing out at that individual. And
Mhm.
that's one of those situations that shows up in relationships specifically, but what's behind that is you had somebody use kindness against you at some point. And so now you've got this part of you that's starting to come up and be like, "Nope, I'm not gonna let that happen again to us because it hurt us so much." And I
That's
mean, this
yeah.
could this is a really good segue into one of the other modalities I use. Like I mentioned
Okay.
earlier, I'm a parts work facilitator, and the method I use is very inspired by yogic principles. So
Mm.
as well as internal family systems is informed it a little bit, but we drop you into a really deep meditative state, and then I bring you inside yourself, and you meet these parts of you directly that might be, telling you those stories in your ear, those little
Mm.
voices of criticism, or that one saying that, everybody's gonna hurt you or nobody's gonna like your work. And we get to meet that part directly as you being in yourself and your full,
Interesting.
true, or higher self to meet this younger part of you or this protective part of you in a way that you can form a relationship and kind of take over whatever protective role it has in the end.
Interesting. Is that kind of like hypnosis in a way?
From what I have heard from clients, there is some similarity to it in their
Okay.
experiences. I have had some people that have worked with hypnotherapists, and then have worked with me as well, and they're like, "Yeah, there's definitely a bit of that in the experience." I mean, again, we are dropping you into a meditative state right at the start, so we are trying to get those different brainwave functions going a little bit more, so we can
Mm.
really integrate these experiences and have you be present for yourself.
I could totally see how just being in a more relaxed state would allow you to kind of look at trauma in like a different way and not be so maybe triggered or like I don't know what word to use, like anxious about it, you know?
Triggered, activated, charged. These are words I like to use.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's powerful. I mean, one of my own experiences with it, I was kind of working with a system. So it was a collection of parts that kind of have a relationship. And one of them has this really over compassionate aspect to them. And so like
Mhm.
that kind of you can see my people pleasing past in that part. And then I've got another side that's really, really sassy and really stubborn.
Mm.
And so there's got that conflict between the way those 2 want to operate in the world. And again, they're both very protective parts. One of them protected me by pushing people away, by being steadfast in what they wanted and what they thought. And the other
Mm.
part would always kind of do the pushover and be like, concede to whatever everybody else wanted. So as I've been working with these 2, which is just working with, parts of myself, um, we're at a point where there's like the relationship now where there's a greater trust from me and myself showing up in the world that I can be assertive when I need to be and that I
Mm.
can be compassionate when it's appropriate. And
Mhm.
I don't need to worry about necessarily shifting one way or the other too much. I will be honest, the assertive side hasn't really been played with or nurtured so much. So I'm still kind of getting used to that aspect and learning how to do that in ways that are aligned with my own personal values, so that are still kind and gentle, yet have that assertiveness too.
Yeah, I mean, I think being assertive is a good skill to have in life anyway, you know? Um, I don't know, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I look at it as more of a potentially positive thing to be able to be assertive in your life, you know?
Oh, I agree, and, like, that for me is that reframe, right? I took that
Yeah,
stubborn sassy, and I
yeah.
flipped it to be, "Okay, that is an attempt at assertiveness."
Okay. There we go.
And, I mean, a lot of the times when I'm talking about emotional states, I see every emotion as being a positive beneficial thing for us, right? That
Mm.
emotional experience, every single one of them has some kind of message for us. Either we're not doing something we want for ourselves, either we're breaking our own boundaries, somebody else is breaking our boundaries, something that we're passionate about is being threatened, or like now we're starting to get into kind of more what we call positive emotions, and those are a little bit easier to understand at times. But
Mm.
even in that state, right, we can be a really passionate person and let ourselves get out of control with that and maybe just make some bad decisions because of that passion
mm,
taking us over, and we may disassociate a little bit or disconnect from the potential, reality of the situation.
yeah, I think I've been there.
I think we've all been there.
Yeah, wow. Well, let's do this real quick. So, what if let's just take a step back and for the viewers or people listening, what is one kind of actionable step that people can do right now to get started on their journey, whatever that may be? And maybe that's too big of a question.
No, that's a great one. Great question. And again, that's kind of often the theme. Like, here's the big thing, that vision. Now, how am I
Yeah.
going to start it? Uh, I I'd make clear on your intentions on why you want to do the thing,
Okay.
connected to your values. So, what's your intention for yourself? Like, I want to offer this. I want to do this versus I want to get. So don't make it about getting, make it about what you're putting out first off as best you can. Connect that to your values. So you have to know your values there. What are your values? I value freedom, respect, love, authenticity, for example.
Hmm.
So everything I do, I try to link back to those values. And then the next one, so once we have our clear attention, we have our values. Now we can start looking at what is the next real plausible step to get to that end goal. So in cases of like, I don't know, what's a specific situation we can look at? Um, Actually, we can look at it this
Yeah.
way. So we have a tool. We take a
Hmm.
look at that vision, like, right? If everything turned out appropriately, you have your one goal, and that would be our largest goal. Like if everything was perfect goal. And then we'll take a look at the lowest possible action you can take.
Hmm.
So, let's say you're launching a business or a website or something. What is the minimum possible action thing you can do that would move you in that direction? And then we like, okay, what's in the middle of those two?
Right.
And then that normally ends up being where our real movement can happen from is that middle step. It's like, okay, I want to launch a website, right? The maximum I could do, the perfect world. I have this perfect website that's multiple pages, has all my information on there. I have my logos, I have my pictures, I have my everything.
Yeah.
The minimum, I can get some little free page and link tree and have a link list.
There you go. Yeah.
Where's the in between in that? Oh, maybe a one-page spread that's got at least my basic information and a little bio and a little caption. And then I can
Yeah.
expand then you can expand on that. So that's just an example using a real world sort of item there.
Yeah.
So intention, values, figure out that middle step, the plausible step, not your big dream and not the minimum step,
Yeah.
and then take that action. I'd also say, check in how you're feeling on that. When you're building these plans, if you make your plan and you're already feeling resistance to it, what's that resistance there? Why? Ask yourself about that. Dig into
Yeah.
that. It's like,
That
I'm
was
making this plan, but I'm afraid. I am so afraid. Okay. Fear's okay. Fear's understandable, right? You're doing something new.
yeah.
So why not have a little bit of fear there? It's okay.
Sorry for the train. I don't know if you guys can hear that. That happens
I
sometimes.
came through a little bit on this
Yeah.
side. That was cute.
Yeah. But that actually brings me to my next question, which is like, what do you often see as the thing that kind of gets in the way for people? What's stopping you from that first step?
Ooh, assumptions that people have around the world. That's a big
Mhm.
one. Uh, Outside of trauma, we'll say the assumptions, stories or beliefs that somebody holds about themselves or the world.
Mhm.
Those 2 tend to be the biggest outside of our more trauma stuff, related stuff. And then the other one I would call is our gremlins, and these are more like our inner voices, our inner critic, those really powerful ones that always seem to crop up, and that those ones we can link a little bit more back to our trauma, but they're definitely one that comes up too.
Yeah, I think artists especially, we're like our worst critics. Understandably so. I mean, we want our work to be good, right? But it's definitely not. It's not a good thing when it gets in the way of you even getting started. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Gotta power through, I guess.
And
Or
this is where I say connection to value is really
yeah.
important and your values, right? Like if you've got that big inner critic, then is it what it's saying to you really aligned with what you believe in your values? Or is it just telling you a story? Can you
Hmm.
acknowledge that story is false? Can you
Yeah.
show yourself some proof that that story, that little gremlin voice is telling you is false? And I
I
tend
think
to like to really bring things back to physical proof
yeah.
items when we're doing any kind of mindset changes.
I think it's really helpful to hear that from another person a lot of the time because I mean sometimes it's as simple as that of just if you have a friend or I mean, obviously talking to a professional would be great for anyone, but
Yeah.
even just being able to bounce something off of someone and have them give you that affirmation that like what you're doing is good or you're on the right track or whatever, then it's kind of like oh phew, all right, okay, I was freaking out about it, but I'm okay.
And
I
it's
don't know
those
why we
kind
yeah.
no, those kind of releases are my favorite to witness.
Yeah,
And those
yeah,
little moments, because yeah, that's really what coaching for me happens to be a lot about is getting those little things out of the way.
yeah,
Um, and that might just be because of the type of people that are drawn towards me in terms of where they're at in their lives, but it's a lot of those blocks, and then a lot of the times it's just they hear themselves say this thing out loud for the first time maybe to another person, and then I
mhm,
ask them some questions about it, and they're sitting there. I'm like, I don't know why I even why did I hold on to this ever? Why have I been doing this? And I can actually relate this back to a personal experience. So here's a personal one. I'm working with a nutritionist and health coach slash mentor.
cool,
They've been in the field a little bit longer than me, and they've got a little bit different expertise. So
mhm,
they've been really great at challenging. And I'm really looking at my diet right now. So I've got a lot of awareness in my life, a lot of toward progression in a lot of other areas.
mhm,
My diet was one of those things that I've kind of just been lacking in taking any action in. And we were talking about this, and I was talking about my past and how I had to basically take care of a whole household and be the
mhm,
responsible adult for 5 other adults or 4 other adults.
wow,
And there was a lot of resentment that I had not acknowledged around that experience that I was still holding on to. And what we discovered is basically I was using this story of utilitarianism around my diet to not address all that resentment.
mm,
And that resentment was holding me back from, cooking my own meals. So I'm like, I eat out a lot, I order a lot
yeah,
previously and do all these other things. Right? If I could just shift it to making my own meals, right there, my diet's already gonna be better. So now I'm working on finding that joy again, releasing that resentment and finding that joy in cooking. So we've got some action items that I'm gonna be taking and also some like some as their nutritionist, they gave me some decent suggestions when I asked, which was really awesome
yeah,
too. I really
it,
appreciate that. It's like offering opinion. I mean, this is why I like the podcasts and jumping into conversations. These are some
yeah,
of the spaces I can offer my opinion and experience. Is when
yeah,
I'm in session, it's all about you. It's all about you, and I'm gonna be asking lots of questions. And even if I do offer an opinion or my own, experience in it, it goes right back to you again. Like, what landed for you in that, or how did that sit with you as like a response?
yeah. I think that's cool though because everyone has their own experience or their own specialty thing that they do. So I mean, you're an artist, so you have some awareness about that stuff. But maybe somebody is a I don't know a lawyer or something completely different that you might not have like that knowledge in, but you can still help them by asking questions about like what they're going through, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like here, my expertise is in around holding that space to
Yeah,
create the exploration and to nurture and hold it for you to be able to have that exploration
yeah,
versus directing you. So I would say direction, that's more mentorship or a consultant. Where coaching, I'm here to boost you up and make you recognize how awesome you are already and that you already have your answers. You just haven't
Yeah.
been able to maybe take those actions yet.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Um, well, yeah, I mean, I think I'm probably going to wrap this up here in a minute, but I wanted to know, I mean, first of all, are you taking clients right now? Can people reach out to you if they're interested?
Yes, yes, I am taking clients. I actually just released an accessible option. It's a pay what you want, pay what you can, with a minimum
Awesome.
price of $120 Canadian. Recommended is $1,000. It is basically $1,500 value package if each session was on its own.
Yeah.
And that's 6 sessions altogether, 3 parts work sessions and 3 coaching sessions. So it's a
Nice.
little taste of what I do. It's accessible, so those that may not necessarily have as much going on in their life can still get access to these things. There is a limited number of those I do have a year. Then I have my main core coaching program, which is a mixture of coaching and education with some other options in there. And it's a 3 months intensive.
Wow.
Uh, and I do have other bundles. And you can find all that information on my website, which is consciouslyconnecting.ca.
Awesome. And I'll have a link for that down below.
Awesome. And yeah, and you can check me out on TikTok as well. That seems to be the platform I've moved to in terms of engagement. I really feel it matches my values. There's a lot of authenticity on that app, and people aren't so concerned with their image. Where
Yeah. Well,
Instagram,
sure.
I found it all was about aesthetic and image, and I'm like, this is not me. It's
Yeah.
also not the way I want to market or do my things. If I'm like trying to sell supporting people and authenticity, I can't be unauthentic.
Yeah, totally. I have a lot to say about Instagram, but I'll hold back for now.
Me too. Don't
Uh,
worry about it.
but no, that's awesome. That's very cool. And yeah, I like TikTok as well. I think you know, you get little bite-sized nuggets of, you know, whatever you're into.
I mean, I'm going out a little bit further than that now, since they
Yeah.
have opened up the longer videos.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so I've been doing a few of those and offering that production kind of quality on a few things. A little mini workshops, 20, 30-minute long workshops, just streamed that way. I've gotten one out so far. And then there was the video review, the song review, which was like 8 to 10 minutes is what I aim
Nice.
for those ones. Yeah. I mean, if you've got a song recommendation for me, nobody's handed me another one since that
Hmm.
video's come out. Where's
Let me yeah, let me think about that.
Yeah, hand me I love independent and smaller artists, and offering them exposure through this
Nice.
is something I would like to do. So like the last one was Carsey Blanton, who I'm not sure if you know her. She's a folk
No.
singer, folk kind of post punk or activist kind of singer. Some beautiful, beautiful music.
Cool. Yeah, I'll say if anyone's watching and maybe has some ideas, throw it in the comments and
Yes.
we'll see what we can come up with.
Awesome. Would love that. Would love that.
Oh yeah.
Is there any other questions you've got for me today?
No, that's about all I got. But just real quick, I mean, do you have anything else you'd like to say, or anything else to kind of, you know, words of motivation or anything that might be helpful for people to hear?
I mean, as a creative individual, if you really want to do that type of work, if you want to make art of some kind, regardless of what kind of art that is, just start.
Yeah,
Just start.
yeah. That's been
Like,
such a theme on this podcast is just get out there and do it.
yeah. I mean, like if I had never picked up the tools and picked up some stone and started to carve, I wouldn't have learned how much that means to me. Um, Here, I've got like one of my carvings right here that
Oh
I'm working
wow,
on.
that's awesome.
Yeah, so there's the incomplete backside of it right now. But right, if I didn't pick up a little stone thing and make that first piece and say, "Hey, this is something I love," then I wouldn't be able to make that piece where I'm at.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've said it before, but you learn so much just by doing what it is you're trying to do. You know, I've met people. I mean, I'm just thinking of somebody off the top of my head who was a drummer in a band that I really liked. And I got to talk to him, and he was saying, you know, I didn't know what the hell I was doing when I started. Like, I joined this band, and I wasn't very good, but like, I learned how to play by like figuring out these songs and like learning. you know, what sounded good. Like he kind of forced himself into that situation and probably was not very comfortable when he started and was really kind of like nervous that people would kind of like pick up on that like he's not very good. But I guess fake it till you make it. Just get out there and do it. And you
Ooh, ooh,
know,
I'm gonna change that one on you a little bit.
oh no, yeah, please.
I have this like thing against fake it till you make it.
Okay,
So
okay,
I've reframed it.
okay,
Practice it until you master it.
okay. I actually like that
What?
better. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that just
Yeah.
who wants to fake something?
No,
Like,
yeah,
oh.
yeah. You're right. You're right. You're totally right.
And I get where
Yeah,
the saying came from, but this is something that's been on my mind a lot, so I just had to bring that
yeah.
up right
Well,
now. Yeah.
it's so cliche and ingrained in conversation. So it's such an easy thing to say. But you're totally right. And I don't think that that guy was faking it. I think he just put himself in a somewhat uncomfortable position that he was able to grow, and
Yeah.
master what he does now.
Agreed, agreed, agreed. And I think that's why, like a lot of things that I do, like a lot of things are called practices
Mm,
because it's a mastery is a journey that never ends.
absolutely. Right on. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for this. This has been an awesome conversation. And yeah, we'll have the links below so you guys know where to find Sarah. And hang out with me for just a second. We're gonna say
For
goodbye to
sure.
we're gonna say goodbye to these guys. So we'll see you guys next time. All right. Peace.